Hi David, how are you? Good
I'm
evening.
good, thanks. How about you, Amanji?
Uh, Thank you for joining this session. Taking time out for my, you know, second episode of Coffee with Amar, and thanks for accepting the request
You're welcome.
for this session. You know,
My pleasure.
so David, let's start with it like your introduction basically, so that our viewers will understand who you are, what is your specialty, in which domain you have worked basically, and how you landed up in service now.
Okay. We don't have, we've only got an hour, so I can't give you the full version. I'll give a brief version. So I have been doing ServiceNow for about 6 years now, I think. Um, but I've been working in IT for a long time. I started out as an Oracle developer. So doing Oracle forms and reports and working on Oracle financials way back when. Did a bunch of live support and development roles, mostly on things with Oracle databases in the back end, and eventually found my way into HP Service Manager, as it was called at the time. Um, I'd been a user of it for a long time and frankly didn't like it, because all it did was hold me back and stop me doing things. Had to raise change requests for all the work I wanted to do, and I just didn't get it. Um,
So,
find myself
HP Quintana and HP this manager was same or it was different tool?
service manager. It started out as Peregrine Service Center,
Okay.
and then it evolved into HP Service Manager. Um, and I worked on various versions of it for several years. Um, so when I crossed over onto the other side and started managing, working on the tool itself, finally it twigged what it was all about and why it was a good thing, and and we were doing ITSM with it, so incident management, change management, problem management primarily. Um, and eventually I was running the platform. It was all on premise as well, so there was lots of late nights and weekend working to
Mhm.
keep the platform running, and that's lots of that in various places. Um, and it started to fizzle out. There was this new kid on the block called ServiceNow, and nobody was buying HP Service Manager, or so it felt at the time. So I was trying to move in that direction. It took a couple of years, but eventually managed it, and started working in a consultancy, going into customers and helping them to implement ServiceNow, um, doing upgrades to start with, and then doing projects to implement ITSM and HR, SD, and most recently, where I'm currently at in Advania, working on asset management, so hardware asset management specifically. Um, yeah, and that's where I'm at right now.
So it was basically HP was going down, and then you chose this service now because it was you were not getting more projects in HP. That is the reason.
Yeah, so places to go and work, in HP Service Manager, we're getting fewer and fewer. So I ended up working in Brussels for 18 months, and working in Paris for a year, and I had to travel to get the work. Um, and then ServiceNow was coming along, and remote working was starting to become a thing then as well. It was just taking off, so I didn't have to go and sit in an office building somewhere halfway across the continent to be able to do the work. So yeah, it's the future.
So how did you find it like HP Manager, this tool, and this service now? So the interference, how it was basically.
So
If
initially, ServiceNow did all the same things that Service Manager did. So it had a CMDB, and it did incident management and change management and problem management, and a lot of it looked very similar, right? And it worked in similar ways. Where ServiceNow won out is typically there's only one language, more or less, barring portals and stuff like that. But within the tool itself, it's all the same language. Whereas in Service Manager, there's always more than one language. There's usually 3 or 4 ways to write any given piece of code, and you can always do things in different ways. There's lots of kind of workarounds and ways to bend the system with Service Manager, partly because it's on premise and partly because it's kind of evolved over time. The way I always thought of it was that Service Manager is what ServiceNow is what you would get if you took Service Manager and built it again from scratch, which is essentially what happened. So when they started ServiceNow, that was the aim, and they started from the ground up to deliver the same functionality, but in a more streamlined way. So it's easier to understand as somebody coming into it. If you've been worked on something else where there's always 10 ways of achieving any given aim, having only 1 or 2 is a big step forward. The other big thing I became aware of is the community. So for Service Manager, if you couldn't figure out how to do something yourself, it stayed not working because there was nowhere to go to try and find an answer. For ServiceNow, there's the community, and you search ServiceNow and blah blah blah, you get thousands of answers. You now get YouTube videos. You've got lots of options to
Strong
try and
community.
find a solution for
Yeah.
stuff.
So ServiceNow is having a strong community.
Yeah, and back in Service Manager days, that wasn't there. So if you couldn't figure something out for yourself, you were stuffed. You had to persevere.
Maybe you can call your friends who is in the same domain. That's what you can do.
Yeah, that's about as far as you could go. There was no, if you Googled for a specific scenario that you'd hit when you were writing a piece of code and it wasn't working the way you expected, you got no answers. The answers were all relevant to some other piece of software, and even the JavaScript that was being used in Service Manager was weird and wonderful JavaScript that was bespoke to that and nothing else. So there was always gotchas and things catching you out.
So I can say it was an easy transition for you, coming from Service Manager to ServiceNow.
Not quite easy, but I already knew what it was I was trying to do, and finding out the how to do it was easier than it would have been, if I'd done it the other way around, certainly. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's say if a person is there who is working on a tool, let's say, which is related to ITSM or CSM, and then they want to come and switch over to ServiceNow. So it will be, very easy, not very easy, it will be relevant to them. They know the process. They just need to understand how ServiceNow works, correct?
Yeah. So if you know what you're trying to do, that's like 50% or 60% of the battle. Then figuring out how to make ServiceNow do it is not so bad. In part because you've got that community you can go to ask questions and to find people who've had the same issue as you in the past. So the biggest issue is definitely knowing what it is you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to do it.
An important point is also one thing, David. ServiceNow is upgrading themselves, all the time. Let's say in a year there are 2 upgrades nowadays, and because of that also it's useful for us, or it's helpful for us. Whatever the functionality we are trying to, develop it, customized it, and we can expect like it can come in the out of the box new release.
Yeah.
So where I have seen the other tools, they just release the tool and there are very less upgrades happening with the tool. That's the reason, they get deprecated
when you're using an old-fashioned on-premise tool that you've customized quite heavily, doing an upgrade is a major undertaking. It's a project that's going to last months or a year, and people just don't want to do it. So that's why you ended up having all these replatforming projects coming along and people saying, well, I could spend a year upgrading my ITSM tool I've got now, or I could buy ServiceNow and implement that in less time. And that's one of the reasons I think ServiceNow grew so fast, because the things it was replacing were hard to keep current and hard to keep on top of. And ServiceNow made that a lot easier. Still not, trivial, but it's a lot easier than it was in those legacy systems.
Yeah. So we understand how you ended up in ServiceNow. Thanks for that. Let's jump to asset management
Yeah.
because we have only 1 hour. So let's start with like the best practices. Let's say if someone he's a newbie, he has not done the asset management,
Hmm.
and let's say as you said, you were doing ITSM, HRSD, and then directly asset management project is given to a person. So what are the best practices to implement the asset management and just understand the infrastructure. It's a very complex IT infrastructure. Nothing is in place. There is no integration is in place. So they
Yep.
have to start from the scratch.
Okay. So if you make the assumption that they have no assets recorded in ServiceNow at all,
Yeah.
then in some ways that makes it easier because um, so sorting through legacy data and making the quality good is hard work. Um, if you're bringing the new things on that you've never had in the system before, you can make sure that data's right before you start, and that's the number one takeaway I would give to people is don't just jump in, look at the data, what you've got. If you've got 10 models of laptop being used, make sure you know exactly how many you've got and where they are and who's responsible for them before you even go anywhere near ServiceNow. And once you've got that data snapshot, you need to keep on top of it because things are moving in and out all the time. These things are always moving around the place. When things break, you get replacements sent out or new people join or people leave. So we have devices flying about all over the place. In terms of what the module does in ServiceNow, I think one of the important things to point out first of all is it's got a relationship to configuration management, but it's not the same thing as configuration management. Asset management is all about essentially the physical devices, and it's all about what they cost. So what they cost to buy, what they're worth now. Oh, my camera's gone on the blink. Let me turn it back off and on again, and
Yeah.
true IT style. There we go. It does this from time to time. I should raise an incident for it, really. Anyway, yeah, so the hardware asset management is all about the physical devices and what they cost. Whereas configuration management is about the software that's on the device and whether it's got the right operating system, whether it's been patched properly, whether it's got the latest antivirus, etc., etc., etc. Usually, you have a one-to-one relationship between a configuration item and an asset, and a lot of integrations go into creating configuration items and then assets as a result of that. So that's just something to be aware of. There's essentially 3 or 4 main processes involved in asset management. There's fulfilling requests when people ask for something. So you have a catalog of all the things that people can ask for that you publish onto a portal, and then they can come in and they get the typical, Amazon-like experience where they choose what they want and they submit a request for it. And so there's fulfilling that request from the stock you've got in your warehouse or warehouses around the planet. That's sending things out, essentially. The second one is reclamations, so getting stuff back in. So if something is broken or somebody leaves the company or you are doing an asset refresh, you get old devices in and send out new ones. You've got that process of bringing stuff back in, checking whether it works or not. If it does, it goes back into stock. If it doesn't, it goes off to be fixed, etc. The third one is as mentioned, is break fix. So triggered from an incident where somebody's reported their machine is broken, the screen's broken or whatever, and you've determined it needs to be replaced. You can directly from the incident in hardware asset management, using something called an asset action, you can trigger a break fix. And the break fix does 2 things. It creates a request for a replacement device, and it creates the reclamation to get the broken device back into stock so it can be fixed. And it's kind of a semi-automated thing. It's quite clever in some ways. There's a few other processes which you touch on is procurement, so getting hold of your assets in the first place. And that is typically on a greenfield implementation where you would create your asset records from. You'd create purchase orders, and then when you receive the assets into stock, it will create the asset records in the system. So that's a useful and a necessary part. That's also where you assign it, value, when it's brought in, because you know how much you've paid for it. There's a process called RMA, which is return to manufacturer authorization, I think. It's not something that I've personally implemented so far. It's all about when something's broken and it's under warranty, getting it back to the manufacturer to be repaired instead of trying to fix it yourself. And that's built into the tool. So there's a
return merchandise authorization.
Return merchandise authorization. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So it's something that's under warranty that stopped working.
Okay. Yeah.
Get it back to the manufacturer to be replaced or repaired. What else have we got? Obviously, you've got a workspace, which allows you a view into what you've got, what the assets are, where they are, who's got them, all of that kind of information. And there's hundreds of different ways to look at that data to analyze it from different aspects. And the system tracks depreciation and it tracks the value of all these assets, all the different categories of asset. It's really quite a powerful tool. It's literally about knowing, out of the 500 laptops that are out there being used, or 5,000, or 20,000, which ones are getting old, which ones are working nicely, who's got ones they shouldn't have, all of that kind of stuff. And that's it's a really important thing certainly in this day and age when lots of people are working remotely. It's really important to keep a track of who's got what, because these things cost a lot of money. So got to keep an eye on it.
And the integrations, like what exactly, what things we need to take care during the integration of, let's say, Intune, and once the connection is established, and how to monitor it, and what are the common errors which you have got during the Intune integration or maintenance, how much time it takes, basically to maintain it.
Maintaining it is very little, actually. It's the usual stuff of checking for errors and checking to make sure it ran every day. But one important thing to note is that Intune is a configuration management tool. It's all about what software is on a machine and the antivirus and all that kind of stuff, and who the primary user is. And it creates configuration item records in ServiceNow. As I say, that there isn't an awful lot of maintenance of the integration itself, but you do need to watch out for that it's creating the right records. So it's worth every now and again checking. One thing that can easily catch people out, particularly for mobile devices, is that it will capture personal devices. If they get enrolled into Intune, then the integration will create a configuration item in ServiceNow and an asset record to go with it. And that can cause issues because those assets don't belong to your company. They belong to the individual in question. So that's one thing to watch out for. But overall, it's pretty smooth. Once you've got it working, it works quite well. You can use it to cross-check. Is the person using the device the same as the person we sent it to? It's not really part of asset management, but it's a handy thing to be able to do. It can give you good validation that your data's right. There's lots of other kinds of integrations that give similar functionality. I mean, Intune's more or less replaced SCCM, but there's others out there that do the same thing.
Yeah, SCCM was on premises, and this is on Azure cloud. So I think that's a major difference. And as we were speaking about the service management, whenever it is on premises, so it takes a lot of we need to take care of maintenance a lot when it is on premises. And if you remember, David, we also have seen a lot of issues of client secret key, in Intune integration. So
Yep.
keeping them in sync with, the non-production instances. So
Yes. So it's important to, once you get your connection set up with a secret, is remember it's going to expire for
yeah,
one,
yes,
and keep a, make sure to track when it's going to expire and exactly what it's connecting to, which is important if you're like us in MSP and you've got multiple clients all
mm,
using, Intune for different sets of data. You need to keep them separate. You need to keep a close eye on that, because what you don't want is for it to just die one day and nobody notice, because that way leads to lots of bad stuff happening.
perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. Let's talk about the data accuracy and integrity, like how we maintain it. Uh, you know, because there can be reports with client as well. They can come to you and they say, oh, this asset is retired, but in the service now it is showing as in use. So how often you get this kind of error from the client? How often it is reported to you, and how you handle it?
Can you give me 1 second?
Yeah. Till then, I will have my coffee.
Sorry. Child who needs paracetamol. She's got a sore head, she said. Right. Where was I?
Uh, Asset data accuracy and
Yes.
integrity.
Okay. Yeah. So this is vital.
Right.
This is what can cause you a lot of pain, and certainly when you've got historical data, if
Mm.
you've been managing assets for somebody and then you try and implement hardware asset management, you're going to face issues in making sure that data is correct. And the important thing to do is to make sure that everybody agrees that what they see in ServiceNow is right. If they don't agree that it's right, they just keep coming back and back and back and saying, but what about this one? And what about that one? So you need to get to a point where everybody is happy that it's correct. And we had issues in the past where the customer was running their own set of reports and exporting stuff into Excel,
Yeah.
and it was taking them days to export data into Excel. And they were exporting from multiple places, from SCCM and NextThink and all kinds of other tools which weren't directly integrated to ServiceNow, but were still looking at the same set of devices. And so they were coming back and saying, well, this is the devices I see in NextThink. Why doesn't that match the devices you see in ServiceNow? Because there's no integration to match them up. That's why.
There are smart people. Always you will find these smart people in at the customer side. You know.
Yeah, and it causes complications because
Hmm.
you know they don't understand why you're telling them that that data is not relevant or that that data is incorrect. In a way, as I said before, if you're onboarding from fresh and there are no asset records in the system, then ServiceNow is by definition correct. When you create an asset record via a purchase order, you've got the thing sitting in front of you in the warehouse. And so you then know that that is a Dell 5440 or whatever the model happens to be. And you've got the serial number and you can read it off the case and you can see the same one on the screen. Then when somebody requests a Dell 5440 and you fulfill that request and send them serial number 1234, you know exactly who it went to. There's no room for any negotiation. So that's the best and easiest way to keep everything straight, is to make sure that you use the ham processes to move these things around. So you send out based on a request, and ServiceNow will update the state of the asset record in the background. When it comes back in again for repair, or when the person leaves, ServiceNow updates the asset record in the background. And you don't want to have hundreds of people in your organization with the ability to go and edit these assets, because then chaos breaks loose. If you let the system follow the process, it keeps everything straight for you, and that's the purpose of it, and that's what it's good for, and that's why we use it. So
Yeah.
if you don't go and mess with stuff in the back end, you can rely on it to be correct. problem comes when things go adrift. You have something in stock and somebody comes to build that device to be shipped out and they find that it's broken. So you've then got to make a manual adjustment to correct for that. And that's where danger lies. If too many people are able to make those connections and start making corrections that are not right, then you end up with inaccurate data. The best way after that, assuming that you've followed the process as well as you can, is to conduct regular audits. Now, when all your customers sit in an office building with their computer in front of them, audits are relatively easy to do. When they're all scattered across, hundreds of different addresses because they're all working from home, it's a bit more tricky. But, using things like Intune is almost like a shortcut to doing an audit through the back door, if you like. It's not strictly how it should happen, but it can be handy. So you can see who's logging into a device. You can see when they last did it. And that gives you, a good indication of, it says it's assigned to job logs. I can see job logs logged into it yesterday. That's a tick. He's got it. If you see somebody else is logging into it, that's a whole different question. Or if you see that nobody's been logging into it for months, then that needs following up. I think that answered the question. I feel like I talked a lot to answer that question.
So from here, like as you said, David, it is rightly correct. So like you were talking about purchase order. So let's talk about a ham process exactly. How it starts, and it's very important to know like what is this purchase order. Then it is very important to know these transfer orders as well. Sometimes it's not always like purchase order will be created. People do their trainings. ServiceNow is open for everyone. Now learning is there, so they think like people have to get this hands on. They have to handle this project. Then only they come to know. Or else if someone has done the training, they feel like always this purchase order will be created. But we both of us we have worked for this asset management. We know mostly it is transfer order. At one place in one stock room there are some assets are there and we need to transfer from one stock to another. So that's the frequent I can say request it will be, correct?
Yeah. So when a request comes in and you're fulfilling it, so you're sourcing it, you have a sourcing task against the request, and that is literally for you to obtain the correct asset in order to fulfill the request. So
David, just to add here, like this is very important, as you said. So this is the first time in ServiceNow you have a what I can say sourcing request under request, because there are people they go under RITM requested item and they search for this sourcing request.
Yeah.
So this is really a good
and
point.
it's something that does confuse to start with. So
yeah.
When a request REQ record
Yeah.
comes in, it can have child request items. That's the standard structure that we know and love, or not. And then each RITM will have a series of SC task records to fulfill that item. So when somebody's ordering from the portal, they can create a request and they can add 3 or 4 different things into the same request. But the important thing is that sourcing activity is at the request level, at the top of the tree. So when that comes into somebody who works in the warehouse, whose job it is to get those things out and ship them about the country, they get one task against the request. It's important that they understand that when they can action that as well. So they don't want to be doing that before it's been approved, for example, or they end up in all kinds of mess. If they start shipping things out before its approval's been given, that's not a good place to be. But assuming the approvals all happen correctly and they've got the sourcing task, it will list out on the screen what models of device they need to get. And there's 3 basic options which get presented. There's consume, which is presented when the person who's the request is for happens to be in the same location as the stockroom that the device is in. And there's some new functionality come with that. I think it came in Xanadu, where you can do distribution channels. So you can associate, several offices or locations with one warehouse. So if you work in any of those specified
Yeah,
locations,
well, okay.
you get that consume option.
So let's say my office is in Liverpool Street, okay?
Yeah,
And then in the Liverpool Street, we have two offices. Let's say London Wall, and another is in Old Jewelry. Okay,
yeah,
so I'm just naming our two offices. The old office and new offices. So in this scenario, there are two offices, live offices. Some of them are staying there, in Old Jewelry, and some of them are working in this London Wall. So you're saying this location is London, and it will show that both the locations, right?
yeah. So you would have a London warehouse, and it would
Mm,
have both of those locations associated as part of the
associated.
distribution channel.
Okay.
So then anybody who worked in either of those two places would
Yeah.
have their request fulfilled from the London office. And that uses the consume functionality, as far as I understand. The second is the transfer. So if you've got it in stock in a different location, say in the Manchester warehouse,
Yeah.
for somebody who works in a London office, you need to get it from Manchester to London. Now, there are a series of, it creates a transfer order. So there's quite a structure here, which is it's similar to the structure of a request and a written and an SC task. You get a transfer order first, and then you get multiple transfer order lines, which will keep getting added to the transfer order until they're all processed together, essentially. So you can have one transfer order with one line and then a series of tasks. Or if multiple requests come in between the same source and the same target, while the transfer order is open, it'll just keep adding more lines. Yeah, potentially against more than one request as well. So it's quite an efficient way of doing things, but it's confusing when you first look at it.
Yeah.
So you've got a transfer order line, which is from the Manchester warehouse to the London warehouse, for example, and it will create a series of transfer order line tasks then to get it off the shelf, to get it ready to be shipped, to put it in a box, to ship it, and then to receive it at the other end. If you want to keep it all within the one warehouse so it gets built, you can do a transfer from Manchester to Manchester, and then you get fewer tasks. You're literally taking it off the shelf and handing it to the build team.
Mm.
Those are the two tasks that it fills out. And as you go through with all of these tasks, the state and substate of the asset are being changed to reflect what's going on with it and where it is. So if you're moving it from Manchester to London, it'll go through, preparing for shipment, in transit,
In
and then
transit. Yeah.
being received. And then when it is at the other end, then it can be given to the end user, and the transfer is then finished, and you move on with the rest of your process. The third option that's presented is procure. So if you've set up your vendors properly and your procurement system is all working in ServiceNow the way you would want it to be, if you've got none in stock, you've got the option then to place an order to buy a new one. There's a bunch of new functionality again in later releases around this where you can, there's something called one touch requests. So if you've got like a just-in-time sort of arrangement with your vendor, you can use procurement and a request will be fulfilled directly from them, and it won't even need to touch your warehouse. So that's a new thing that's recently come in. You've also got, what's the other one I'm thinking of? When you place an order for something, the vendor can advise you with an advanced shipment notification to tell you
Yeah.
what they're going to send you. So you order 10 laptops and they send you back the details of those 10 laptops, so the make and model and the serial number. They can all be created in ServiceNow even before they've turned up in your warehouse. And they have a special state just for that called on order. So you can see, what's going on. So this request from Joe Blogs in London, he asked for this model of laptop that we haven't got in stock at the moment. So we've placed a purchase order with the vendor and they've told us they're going to send device number 6783. That's its serial number. And we can see that in ServiceNow already, even though it's still being shipped from them. So there's a lot of powerful stuff going on here that you can know exactly what's going on with every device, every point through its life cycle.
Just to add here one point, David. Let's say, as you say, this is really confusing. One request, then you have this what you call source request. Then
Hmm.
afterwards, you will have your maybe purchase order or transfer orders, and in the transfer order, again transfer order line. Yeah, transfer
Yep.
order line. Then you have transfer order task. Once transfer order task is then again you come to RITM. Then RITM we have as RSC task which goes to build team. Everything.
Yeah.
Uh, so lot of tabs have to be opened, for all these things. So I
Yep.
feel workspace is the best thing. So whenever we open in the workspace, it will have a parent record, and automatically it creates its own child records. And
Yes.
at that time, I feel that the workspace has been built because of this only. We understand in which parent record we are and in which record we are working basically. So there are minimum chances of doing um, error can happen for this because of this
Yeah.
workspace usage. What do you say?
And uh, what we've found with the workspace is it's a bit overwhelming for people
Mm.
because there's so much there. You've got lots of tabs down the side and tabs across the way and
Yes.
widgets, all over the place. And what we find is that when people first look at it, they just don't know where to look and they don't know where to find the work that they've got to do. So what we did, which I think in hindsight was probably a mistake, was giving them a traditional dashboard that said these are the tasks that you need to work on next. And we're now moving away from that because we're getting them back into the workspace, and we're creating new variants of the workspace pages in order to simplify them so that different audiences just see what they need to see. Because especially being an MSP, you've got the customer needs to see a different set of data from the service manager, who needs to see different data from the person who's running the service day to day, and who needs to see different stuff from the people who are sending stuff out from the warehouse. And getting that balance right, where they're using the power of the functionality in the workspace, but without being bombarded with hundreds of different widgets. That's where the trick is, I think. A lot of the widgets that exist, data visualizations, as they should be called, it's not clear at first glance who they're for, which audience they're intended to be for, because it tends to span all of those audiences. If you want to do something to do with hardware asset management, you can find the right place in the workspace. But if you've got two pieces of functionality that you use every day, and you have to find a third one, it's going to take you a while because you don't use it very often, and there's lots in there. The functionality is really good. It just needs a bit of streamlining, in my view.
Yeah.
That's where the complexity comes, I think.
I think they are improving it. The idea is same, like when workspace came. So they are also evolving their it's a transformation, I can say. So
Yep.
they are taking the feedback from the users like us, basically from the technical people, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it is changing a lot because we are seeing this from Tokyo, and we have reached till Xanadu, and we have seen lot of differences in
Yeah.
workspace, and
And
we are
and
liking it. We are liking it
now
now.
with UI Builder,
Yeah, I will.
it's
Yeah.
getting better and better to understand what's in there and why it's there and how it's built, and to be able to then tweak that to your own needs. I mean, that's one thing with Ham is, in particular, the flows that ship with the product will be unlikely to meet all your requirements. My view is that they are starter flows. They give
Yeah.
you the basic bones, but things like approvals, you need to go and you need to specify that within your process. And if you've got a build task and a shipping task, the build task isn't there out of the box. We had to add it in. So it gives you the outlines of how a process would work in a fairly simple way on that side of things. But being flow designer, it's easy to add and easy to change and make it do what you want. But as long as you're not expecting it to be a fully formed, perfect solution to your asset management, right out of the box, then it's good. It does do what it's supposed to do, just it doesn't cover every scenario without you tweaking it a little bit. But I think that goes with any tool and most parts of the platform as well.
Everyone will have their own process, like if we talk about this warranty process.
Yeah.
So some of the companies does not have a warranty process. They will directly dispose it, but
Mhm.
some of the companies have the warranty process. So I think in the asset reclamation also we need to add this task. So yes, this is the point. But how difficult it
I
is,
mean,
like,
another example, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt,
yeah.
is the asset reclamation process. Out of the box, it stops at that assessment. So you assess the device that's come back, and if it's good to be reused, it goes back into stock. Otherwise, the process just stops there,
Oh, yeah.
and then people have to go manually update the assets to put them in the right state, if they're being fixed or whatever. But then now in Xanadu, they've launched a repair process. So
Oh,
something comes in, it gets assessed, you find it's broken, right? You trigger the repair process, and it goes down a whole new process to say, right, well, what's wrong with it? Why is it wrong? How much is it going to fix, etc., etc. And it generates all of the relevant, structure around managing getting something fixed, either by yourself or by the vendor. That wasn't there when we first implemented HAM, but it's there now, and we're going to be implementing it shortly.
point of discussion. I'm very much interested in that. Because yes, we added one more extra task in that.
We
Now
did.
it is out of the box. So ServiceNow is listening to us basically. They
Yeah,
understand the
so they
process.
took what we did and they've
Yeah,
extended it further, which is good.
good. Yeah. So David, the next question of mine is like, let's jump to this as we were talking about data visualization. So as we can see, the workspaces is there, and UI builder is not that friendly for now. I can say it's very technical.
Yeah, even ServiceNow says it's a steep learning curve.
Yes, yes, it is. So I think they have taken from one of the, I can say it is a data migration from other tool, and ServiceNow has bought into this domain.
Hmm.
So it's not that easy, I feel. So that's the reason I think this platform analytics experience has come. It's the look and feel is very similar to workspaces,
Yep,
and there are some configurations. There is a workspace called platform analytics workspace. Okay, so it's very like if you create a data visualization, when you click the record, it can go to that workspace basically. So this is the idea behind it. But
yep.
yeah, so we can discuss on this, like how
Yeah,
often
so
you have used. Yeah,
I've spent a bunch of time this week
yeah.
building a dashboard in platform analytics. Um, and then the week before I was doing a lot of work in UI builder and working workspace pages. So previously, if you built a dashboard with normal reports, uh, you couldn't see them in a workspace. They were
Mm,
completely separate. You had to build them twice, basically, if you wanted to show the same data.
yeah.
The biggest thing I see with platform analytics is any data visualization that you build in a platform analytics, you can save it to a library, first of all. So you can reuse it on multiple dashboards in multiple domains if you want to, which is a really handy feature. Um, One thing to be aware of though, if you save a widget to the library and then you duplicate it and edit the duplicate copy, when you save it, it will overwrite both of them. So you've got to be careful about that. If you want to duplicate stuff, do it before you put it in the library. So there we go. There's a lesson. Um, but yeah, so you can create these data visualizations. You can save them into the library. You can reuse them on different dashboards. But you can then also use them in your workspace. So you can
Mm,
go onto your workspace page and you can pick those data visualizations out the library, boom, straight on the workspace. You've got the opportunity in the workspace, you can specify a page that references a dashboard. So you can have a whole page or a section of a page in your workspace that just shows that dashboard. So they don't have to go anywhere else. It's already there. So there's some really powerful stuff in there. And as you said, they are built in the same way, in the same look and feel within the workspace. you do it the same way in both ways, and then all of the things you build are then interchangeable both ways. So it's really good.
Powerful it is, yeah, yeah. And just to add a point, like how it was like home pages got deprecated, then dashboard came, and now because we have changed the UI, from UI
Hmm.
16 to next experience. So dashboard was a part of UI 16, and
Yep.
now we have gone to this, next experience. So platform analytics experience is part of that.
Yes.
So ServiceNow has given official statement as well by Zurich release. They will migrate all the dashboards to platform analytic experience by default. And before
Hmm.
that, they have given the time. You guys can do by your own. And they have this migration center as well. There is a module, and directly people can convert that dashboard to platform analytics experience.
Yes, I've tried it. It worked.
Yeah. Some of the reports are there which includes indicator source. So
Yep.
basically performance analytics. So confusing, performance analytics, platform analytics. Yeah.
Yes.
So it takes it gets tear off. I have seen that the data visualization does not work.
Yeah.
So I've,
So
yeah.
when you're building a data visualization and you go to specify the data source, you can choose a table, obviously, but you can also choose any of the performance analytics indicators that exist. So it's quite powerful in that way.
Powerful.
You
Yeah.
can mix and match. You can put performance analytics based data visualizations in, or you can put in straightforward ones based on tables or even views um, on the same page. And it's really all you have to do is understand the difference. What each one is showing you, why you need to use performance analytics, and you're away. Um, it's quite powerful.
Like after the Xanadu upgrade, so we had this performance issue on our instances. So I was just reading about all these performance issues, how it can happen. So there are some of the reports users have created, which has a very lot of condition into it, but it's a legacy reports.
Yep.
So it was there in a document of ServiceNow. Use platform analytics. Sorry, performance analytics. That's the reason performance analytics is there. So they do
Yep.
take care of these performances.
Because it's
Database
gathering the data in batches,
jobs.
and you
Yes,
then
in jobs.
query that batch data instead of
Correct.
querying it real time.
Real time. Yeah.
And
Correct.
that's that, and the fact that you get to be able to do trending better over time.
Yes.
Those are the main reasons for performance analytics. Um, it's still one of those things. The more you look at it, the more you learn. There's so much in it, so much potential. I don't think many people even touch the surface of what it's capable of doing.
Yeah, and it was tough. If you create a platform, why I'm making mistake. Performance analytics reports,
Yep.
and that report, David, if I need to display it on a dashboard, then I have to do a lot of configuration. I have to create a widget. I have to configure that widget, basically. And if it is a domain separation, then different story. Dashboard is in fulfillment domain, MSP domain basically, and this all indicators, indicator source, breakdown source should be in global domain. This is how it works.
Hmm.
So it's very lengthy process. Then I have to, if I need to display this on a dashboard, I have to create a widget. And on the widget, only widget will reside on the dashboard. Okay. And on this widget, everything we need to put, indicator source, and this is how it works. But with
Yep.
this platform analytics experience, they directly you take the data
You just,
visualization.
as if it's a table, you just say,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to get the data from there, please. Boom. There it
Like
is.
a normal reporting, I can say,
Yeah.
like a normal reporting, which where we used to select the data source or the table, or and directly it will give us the record. So I find it very powerful personally.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
David,
I mean, and there's loads of different types of visualization you can build
yeah,
out of the box. Um, You can also create custom ones, which is somewhere I'd like to go at some point. If I ever think of a scenario that the standard ones don't fit,
great, yeah.
it might be quite interesting to go and create a custom one, but I haven't come across that yet.
So let's talk about this now, reportings and all. Let's jump to a question, like what are the common challenges organization face when implementing this asset management in ServiceNow? So what do you think? What are the common challenges people can face?
Challenge number one is legacy data. So they don't know what they've got now,
Hmm.
and they're expecting that just by turning on the ServiceNow module, that suddenly all the data will be correct, and that's not how life works, sadly. Somebody has to put in the hours and make sure the data is correct. And if that means phoning up every person who's supposed to have a machine and saying, "Have you still got that machine?" Then that's what needs to happen. And that's why I say it's critical to get that done up front so that everybody agrees we've got 1,732 working machines, not 1,734, because that's somebody on the hook for £2,000 for a laptop.
Mhm.
If that number is different, so it's critical. The second is the classic getting across the message that asset management has nothing to do with how much memory is in a computer or whether it's got Windows 10 or Windows 11 on it. That still to this day, I'm getting people not understanding that distinction. So then they say, well, I want details of assets that are not being used. Yeah, well, that doesn't make sense. It's a configuration item that's not being used. The asset is just the physical box.
Physical
So
box. Yeah.
yeah. So those are the two biggest things, and after that, it's nail down what it is you're going to provide. Tell people these are the processes we are implementing. So we're doing this one. We're doing request fulfillment. We're giving you a portal with a catalog on it. We're doing asset reclamations, break fix, and we will manage the stock and ship things about. But we're not doing RMA because we don't have a maintenance contract with the vendor or whatever. It's very vitally important that that's specified, in writing, and everybody knows where the boundaries are. Whether or not you're doing the financial side of things, are you going to work out depreciation for people? If you're an MSP, are you doing their accounting for them basically for these assets or not? So those are the things you need to decide on and nail down. And then it needs to be clear to people, what they're getting, who their contact points are, same as any other process, and get that reporting right. So make sure they've got the right information so that they can see what's going on in their asset estate, and also so that they can see whether you're performing your service to the required standard, what's specified in your contract. And obviously, this is simpler if it's all one organization and you're doing it all for your own company. It gets much more complicated when you've got lots of customers doing the same or very similar things within your tool, which an MSP does.
And last question I have now. How you think like this, the emerging technology like, Now Assist, or I can say AI, can help asset management in service now? So what are your points? How would you like AI to help asset management basically?
How I would like it to help
Yeah.
is to be able to do some of that grunt work. So we think this asset is not being used, but your state still says it is being used. Can you find out why? Who last used it? When was it last used? When was it last shipped out? Give me all the information about this asset in a nice, easy to read form so that we can understand exactly where it is. When was it last audited? When was it last seen? All that kind of information. That's the stuff that takes a long time. So, if Joe Bloggs has left the company and nobody knows where his laptop is, tracking down exactly where it is, that's hard work.
Yeah.
And if AI could make that easier by summarizing all the information we've got about that device, it was last seen in this building on this date, that would be very helpful.
Life is easy. I think because I have also not explored Now Assist, how it is helping in asset management, but we should explore it. Yeah, this is a good point. Sometimes let's say Intune integration is not working, so directly we can tell the AI why this integration is not working.
Yeah.
Direct answer comes,
And
license is expired, client secret key is expired. Yeah.
and it's going to do the same things that you would do.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
an experienced person, you're going to say, right, well, what's the most obvious thing? The certificate's expired, the secret's expired. These things happen regularly. And why it's important to keep track of them. But it's when it gets outside those often obvious things, that's where the AI would be useful, to think of the more obscure
What
potential reasons why something might happen.
What do you think, David, about audit? As you were saying, audit is very important. If audit is done by AI, then how it will be?
Audit, well, I don't know how it would do it. Potentially, it would be looking at cross-referencing that configuration item and asset data in the same way that I've done manually on spreadsheets to try and track things down before. I think audits are something we didn't touch on. Audits make use of the mobile app, and you can scan devices using your phone and do audits that way. It's a really powerful feature that we've not really used yet, that I want to use. Because auditing things is essentially your snapshot of the truth. And if you don't have any snapshots of the truth, then everything is relative. So I think it's important that you get that schedule of regular audits into place. And so anything you can do to make that easier is going to be a good thing. If we could use AI to say, yeah, everything looks perfect for this device. I can see that Job Logs is using it. I can see it's assigned to Job Logs. It was sent to Job Logs. It's all good. You can automatically tick that one off. And it can just give you a short list of things. Well, Job Logs is using that computer, but it was sent to Fred Smith. That kind of thing. If it could give you that short list of ones that you need to look into more carefully, or people who've got 3 laptops. Why have they got 3 laptops? If it could produce you that data and the background, they've got these 3 laptops, and this serial number was sent to somebody completely different 2 years ago. That useful information just collated for you instead of you going to have to dig for it would be really useful. And the information is there. You can go into the history of the asset and the history of the CI, and you can see how many incidents this CI has been referenced on, and how many requests it's been referenced on, and all that kind of stuff. But then you need to kind of piece the jigsaw together, get the timeline together. And if AI could do a summarization of that and show you a timeline of all of the things that happened to a specific device from the day it was bought to now, that would be really useful.
Life will be easy.
Because it's easy. At the moment, the data's in lots of different places, and it's hard. You have to piece it together. And if it could produce that output, all on one page, that would be really good.
Perfect. So this can be a suggestion for ServiceNow from us.
Yeah, I don't as yet know what they're trying to make AI do in asset management. It's not somewhere we've got to yet.
Yeah.
We're walking before we run.
Perfect, David. So all my questions are answered. Thank you.
Every question you could ever possibly think of? I don't think so.
Just in 1 hour, what I had planned to ask you. Basically, that question. Yeah. So, because it just we had 1 hour, and people find it difficult to listen to 1 hour as well. So we need to keep short and concise, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you, David, for removing the time for me, and it was great talking to you. I think it will be helpful for a lot of people, just to understand how asset management works in ServiceNow.
Yep. It took me a while to fully get my head around some parts of it. As we've said, some of it is quite confusing when you first glance at it. It was like, well, he's doing this, and it creates that task and that task. Why so many tasks? But after a while, it sort of sinks in that each of those tasks is making a change to the state of the asset in the background, so you can know exactly where it's up to and what's going on with it. That's the key. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that is the key. The main flow. Source request, then transfer order, purchase order, RITM, and the catalog task. So that is the key of hardware asset management. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So we should stop here. Thank you, David, and have a good night, good sleep. Thank
Thank
you.
you. You too. And
Yep.
see you soon.
Sure. Thank you, David.